Welcome to Water Talk with Paul the Waterman, brought to you by Water Pros. Paul the Waterman is Colorado's expert on all things related to the water we use and drink in our homes. Have you ever thought about where your water actually comes from? Is it safe to drink? Is it harmful to my health, my skin, or my hair? Paul the Waterman knows water, and he has the answers. So get ready to talk to the Waterman yourself right now. Call in with your questions to talk with your host, Paul the Waterman.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Thursday. I'm Paul the Waterman, and welcome to Water Talk. If you have questions, please give me a call. 303-477-5600 will get you right directly to me in the show. Again, that's 303-477-5600. Today, we're going to review the topic of pharmaceuticals. And when I was doing my research for the program, I was shocked and surprised at how long pharmaceuticals have been a question in our drinking water supply. And you don't hear about it so much today in the mainstream media, but boy, 16 years ago we sure did. Let's hit our first spot.
New worries tonight about the safety of America's water supply. In the first nationwide investigation of its kind, the Associated Press found that at least 41 million of us are drinking water that contains traces of prescription drugs. And now many are wondering, is our water safe? Here's Nancy Cordes.
The Associated Press investigation reveals that nearly every drinking water supply in the country that's been tested for pharmaceuticals tested positive. 24 major metropolitan areas from coast to coast. What turned up? Trace amounts of everything from sex hormones to drugs for livestock, anti-seizure medications, prescription painkillers, even the antidepressant ingredient in Prozac.
How many water suppliers that you spoke to actually filter out pharmaceuticals?
Virtually no water supplier we talk to will claim or can claim to entirely filter out pharmaceuticals because the treatment systems aren't designed to filter out pharmaceuticals.
In Philadelphia, for example, scientists detected 63 different pharmaceuticals in the untreated watershed and 56 in the drinking water. Just a handful had been eliminated by filtration.
The EPA doesn't yet even require water providers to test for them.
Prescriptions have risen by 13% in the past 5 years to 3.8 billion a year, and Americans buy nearly as many non-prescription drugs. It all gets flushed through our bodies and into the water supply.
We are a medicalized society, and I think it's important for people to recognize the kind of public health implications of this kind of medicalization.
The concentration of drugs Americans are drinking is very low, like 1 part per billion.
If you took a sugar cube and dissolved it in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, that would be just about a part per billion. For many chemicals, it may not be something to be concerned about. For some chemicals, they're actually designed to be active at very low concentrations like that.
At the Stroud Water Research Center in Pennsylvania, they've examined links between waterborne drugs and the feminization of male fish.
Essentially, the aquatic organisms are being bathed in these compounds. So what does it mean when a human drinks water that is contaminated with these same mixtures for decades? It's really unknown.
If the risks are unclear, so are the solutions. Home filters aren't designed to remove all drugs, and bottled water often comes from the very same source as tap water. Nancy Cordes, CBS News, New York.
So that's concerning because that was 16 years ago. And now we've learned a lot, haven't we, in 16 years? But one of the things we learned is the measurement part per billion, because that's the same measurement the EPA came out not too long ago, part per billion, when we were talking about PFAS and forever chemicals. Now, 16 years ago, that's huge because I think the damage from then to now is probably 16 times, if not more. Right, the pharmaceutical contamination. So a while back, Scott and I did a show, and we had a guy come on that did the engineering for water treatment in water reservoirs. And he told us point blank that every major over-the-counter pharmaceutical was testing positive in their water samples. And so I think it's huge today because back then, 16 years ago, sex reassignment and people augmenting their bodies wasn't mainstream, wasn't And I guess that's the right word, right? It wasn't, just something that we didn't talk about. It probably was done, but it wasn't, that was something that was brought up mainstream in the news and talked about, especially, in the political arena. So my concern with pharmaceuticals is once you take a medication, your body metabolizes it, and then that becomes a metabolic. So when you use the restroom, and once you flush the stool, that pharmaceutical is now in our water supply. We used to think, years ago that, the acidic conditions in water could break down pharmaceuticals, or certain, environmental factors could break down pharmaceuticals. But you're going to find in today's program that that's just not the case. And I think because of what's happened in society today, I believe we're not hearing about the concern of pharmaceuticals, because if we were told the truth, I think it would be a tremendous red flag. My concern right now is, not so much about antibiotics. Do I believe we have antibiotics in the water supply? Absolutely. And I think, the science out there to prove it, because how many people, get sick, get infections, how often was antibiotics prescribed, but now how many prescription antibiotics are becoming ineffective for certain bacterial diseases that people are getting. But the other main concern for me with pharmaceuticals is the hormones and sex reassignment hormones, where, your body, if you're trying to, give your body estrogen and that's not normal for your body's going to do everything it can to get rid of it and then expel it out of the body, and it's going to be in the water supply for the rest of us to drink. Puberty blockers. That's another thing that scares the heck out of me, being in our water supply. And I think that's something that we should all pay attention to. Let's go ahead and hit clip 2.
Ready to be scared? Even if you run your water through the most filtery of filters, it will still have chemicals in it from discarded prescription drugs. You have 6 seconds to freak out. Go. Hey peeps, Trace here for D News. Prescription drugs are showing up in lakes and rivers and streams, and some of that water will make its way inevitably into our bodies. These drugs get there because we humans are not so awesome at taking care of prescription chemicals. We either excrete them through our bodily waste, which I know we can't really help that much, or some people are still flushing drugs down the toilet. It's not like they just disappear. How are these drugs getting there, and what can they really do? A report by the Royal Society of Chemistry admits that once a concentration reaches a certain level, around 1 part per million, the chemicals can begin to affect the environment. They also admit that these drugs have been running into the groundwater since the 1990s, as most water treatment systems aren't really designed to screen out active ingredients like hormones or small molecules. The FDA and the EPA found that many urban and rural sources of groundwater, while clean and pure enough to drink, contain trace amounts of ingredients from birth control pills, antidepressants, painkillers, shampoos, anti-epileptics, and other pharmaceutical products, including caffeine. And worse, these drugs were beginning to affect the wildlife as well. Researchers at the U.S. Geological Survey discovered intersex fish in the Potomac River back in 2006, probably due to estrogen contamination. The USGS went on to admit that 80% of streams in Iowa were contaminated with everything from cholesterol medication to steroids. And on top of that, researchers in the UK found fish with deformed sex organs downstream from drug manufacturing plants. And if rivers continue increasing in contaminants like hormones, the chemical compounds will cut photosynthesis in algae, plants, and underwater fungi by 99%. And then the fish will eat those biofilms and suffer as well. Now comes the fun part. What happens when we eat these estrogenic-riddled fish, or drink the anti-anxiety-filled water that filters through aquifers below stream beds and into our houses? We don't know yet. Humans are pretty good at resisting such small amounts of drugs, and so far, they've only affected small animals, tiny plants, and the like. But if we don't do something soon, the problem is only going to get worse. One way to help is simply follow the rules. The FDA explains proper disposal of pharmaceutical drugs, so always follow those guidelines and be sure you dispose of prescription medications properly. We can't help excreting them as waste. Really, we can't. It's going to happen. But we can properly dispose of expired pills. Do you think maybe over-medication is the problem? What creative solutions can you come up with to keep this crap out of the water? Transcribe your thoughts thoughts in the comments or send us a tweet at DNews. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I'm Trace, and I am off to have a tall glass of tap water.
Tall glass of tap water. Oh, my goodness gracious. Reverse osmosis drinking water systems is what we need, everybody. Point of use reverse osmosis drinking water systems. So if you have a comment on this topic, you can give me a call right here at 303-477-5600 or any other question regarding water treatment, water quality. I'm here at 303-477-5600. So pharmaceuticals contain active ingredients that give significant benefits to society. We need them. Absolutely. Cold medicine for sure. Can you just think of the nasal sprays? Have you seen the commercials on TV with all the different nasal sprays they're having? Cold medicine is something that I think is an important part of everyday life. The other thing is pharmaceuticals can be synthetic or natural chemicals, and they can be found in, again, prescription medications, over-the-counter therapeutic drugs, and even veterinary drugs. The medicines. Did you see that here in the last story, where they said that it goes through the soil and gets to the groundwater contaminant. So people that are on well water are not, you're not immune to this problem. It absolutely should be a concern for you as well. Pharmaceutical contamination, I think it's safe to say, has probably been going on since really, the beginning of the modern day water treatment, water filtration system, and the distribution of water throughout a municipality. Let's just say that. Now you have to think about other contamination, pharmaceutical manufacturers, I'm sure in the 60s and 70s before the EPA really got involved, that was a big issue. And it's clear in these last two stories that we shared with you, they don't just disappear. They don't dissipate. They don't go away. Isn't that amazing? That a pharmaceutical, it just doesn't disappear. And they build up in the water supply. So if they're going to start affecting aquatic life, and then we eat the aquatic life, absolutely is it going to affect us? And I think everybody would agree that, over antibiotic is absolutely a problem, especially, do you remember, and I mentioned this before, when they told us to crack down on all the hand sanitizers, right after COVID, and they wanted us to stop doing that as much and get away from the antibacterial soaps because that was creating an issue. But with pharmaceutical contamination, the other problem that I have now in modern times, our story today, what do you think is the bigger concern? People that use reusable water. And everybody right now in the metro area, I think it's safe to say we're reusable water to some point. But gosh, if you live in Castle Rock, pretty soon 75% of your water supplied to you by the city of Castle Rock is going to be reusable water. That, to me, is scary. We have to take the quality of our drinking water, our own responsibility. There's too much going on. And I can tell you right now, they are not testing for pharmaceuticals like they should, or if they are, they're not letting us know. And I hope the new incoming administration definitely does something, with that. I might write an email to, Robert F. Kennedy and say, hey, Mr. Kennedy, sir, let's talk about our water. Not just, the plastics and the contaminants and the food dye. Let's get our water and let's talk about, the problem of the water concern. I think that's a major issue. When you talk about pharmaceuticals entering the water cycle through various ways, human, excretion, every time if we dump it down the toilet or every time we use the restroom, that is adding pharmaceuticals to our water supply. So that would be improper disposal of medications. And then, of course, agricultural runoff, because that livestock is treated with antibiotics. We go to the store and there's labels on the meat products that we purchase that say antibiotic free. But antibiotics are absolutely used. So then, what happens with, not to be gross, but think about this. When you have animal waste and human waste, that all has to be dispersed someplace. And so all the contamination in the waste, human waste and animal waste, is going to end up in our environment and end up in our water supply for sure. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
Water Pros end of year special for KLZ listeners is here. For $31.95, receive a whole house smart computer water softener and a point of use reverse osmosis drinking water system. Get rid of hard water. Eliminate dry skin. Feel the difference in the shower. With the holidays just around the corner, remove the forever chemicals, pharmaceuticals, and microplastics and provide your family with the best this holiday season. Call Water Pros 303-862-5554 or find them on the KLZ radio programming page.
What's in your water? Are you concerned about drinking hormones, antibiotics, or dangerous chemicals? Paul the Waterman here from Water Pros. Don't wait to be sure your water is free from those contaminants. Have our professionals help with affordable solutions. Visit waterpros.net today. Water Pros is proudly military-owned and operated, all products made in the USA.
The EPA is making changes in regulations for water safety because of elevated levels of lead, Gen X, and forever chemicals in water supplies. Locally owned and operated Water Pros has home treatment solutions ready to install today. Water Pros employs the latest technologies and an expertly trained staff to help you with hard water, lead in your water, and mitigating forever chemicals. Full home solutions started in 1995. Book your complimentary test and consultation now, waterpros.net.
This is KLZ 560 AM, your home station.
Welcome back to Water Talk. I'm Paul Dowding, a.k.a. Paul the Waterman. Glad to have you with me. Give us a call, 303-477-5600, with your questions or comments on today's topic. So, we have to remember how this contamination, and that's what it is, gets into our water supply. And so we're talking about waste disposal. We're talking about human waste and animal waste. And we know that the human waste is converted and sold as fertilizer, which creates another problem because then the contamination in that human waste sold fertilizer contaminates ground, contaminates the water supply, to the point where we had the forever chemicals, the PFAS. Human waste from the waste treatment plants contaminated with PFAS has spoiled agricultural land. There's been farms in Texas and I believe Wisconsin that had to shut down because of the high concentration of PFAS that ended up contaminating their soil. You have all kinds. So we have the human sewage, we have animal sewage, which is liquid manure, which contaminates the soil, which gets down into our groundwater supply. Definitely health risk. According to the World Health Organization, the concentration of pharmaceuticals found in drinking water are typically very low. However, there's still a concern about long-term exposure. Now, remember, typically low is 1 part per billion is still an issue. We have a caller. Let's go. Liz, thanks for calling. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. So what's going on?
Good. I just had a question. My question is, I live in the center of Denver, and we just had our water lines replaced. I think it was money from the Inflation Reduction Act or something like that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, do you think that will change the pressure for the water coming into my home?
Do you have a pressure regulator? How old's your home? A couple questions right off the bat, so forgive me. Let me start again. How old is your home?
It was built in 1951.
Okay. So some of those homes don't have a pressure regulator. Do you know once they switched your lines out that they put a pressure regulator in your home?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's something that you might want to consider. Water pressure will vary from the municipality. And, mm-hmm. a pressure regulator helps just that, helps regulate water pressure. And also what it does is helps regulate high water pressure spikes that could be harmful to your fixtures and your appliances.
Okay. So it's a good idea to get a water regulator for your home.
Yep, water pressure regulator. And what you can do is let me give you my office number, and I can definitely help you out with that. It's 303-862-5554. I'll say it again, 303-862-5554. And it's a good idea to, we could come out, you could get a baseline test the water pressure coming in. Are you noticing low water pressure? Is that what your concern is?
No, but I did have someone say you need a pressure regulator, and then we didn't follow up. And now that I'm listening to you, I'm just wanted to call and inquire what you thought, and I probably should call and get a regulator.
Yeah, pressure
for my home.
regulator. Absolutely. Modern day appliances like your dishwasher and wash machine can handle up to 100 psi water pressure. So anything that comes in exceeds that could create some sort of damage and cause actually water to leak. And it could cause a faucet to pop off with high water pressure spikes. So absolutely, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you so much.
Hey, have a great Christmas. Thanks for calling.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Water pressure definitely will fluctuate, and so pressure regulators are absolutely a great idea to have. What you can tell if you have one or not is there'd be right, either below or above your water meter. I've seen them both, to me it looks like a bell. It looks like a bell that would be on your, remember a bell on your teacher's desk, or a bell at a hotel lobby. That's to me what it looks like. And so if you have one, that's great. Now, pressure regulators don't last forever, and probably about every 10 years you should think about, getting your water pressure checked, and that's something that probably should be replaced every 10 years. Keep in mind, most water pressure regulators are post-water softeners if you have a water softener. So hard water can absolutely, affect those. So back to our topic at hand, with the World Health Organization and the concern of pharmaceuticals found in our drinking water, are typically very low. Now, remember, part per billion. And we went down to also, part per trillion. We've heard that. So we've heard numbers where they wanted the PFAS of forever chemical contamination to be as low as 4 part per trillion. So that's not a huge number, is it? And then they also said everyone right now has some sort of PFAS contamination in their body. And so is that measured at a part per trillion, and will it accumulate? These are great questions, and these are topics that need to be mainstream. In the mainstream media, we need to go out and force the issue. We need to call our water district and ask them what kind of water testing that they're being done. And that's another thing that really bothers me. Remember, a couple weeks ago, there was a story out there where the Colorado State Lab lost their EPA accreditation because somebody decided to fudge numbers. Why do that? Why even do that? So, it's important that we, they continue the research and monitoring, because now back to, these numbers are part per billion or part per trillion, because now the PFAS from 4 part per trillion, then they said, okay, PFAS needs to be at zero. At zero. What can we do to address these issues? The World Health Organization recommends several strategies to replace pharmaceuticals in drinking water. These include improving waste water treatment process. That's going to be very expensive. The only way to remove these is through nanofiltration. Implementing pharmaceutical take-back programs. That's a great idea. Enhancing regulations on pharmaceutical waste management. But see, here's the other thing. What good is that all going to do is if they prescribe too much or if we take too much, because then what we take, what's the issue? It's as we expel, as we use the restroom. I guess that's the only way to say it. Every time we use the restroom and we're on medications, we're flushing pharmaceuticals down the sewer into, the water treatment plant that gets into our water supply. So maybe what we need to do is think about, the type and how much prescription medication we're taking and all the vitamins that everybody takes, obviously there's benefit. But maybe what we could do also is drink more water to flush our body to get rid of the toxins. I think drinking more water is absolutely what we could do. 2 is, use reverse osmosis to, cook with your, for your vegetables. When you're this is the season of soups and the, chili. We have college football, the football playoff. On a side note, do you think people are going to leave their Christmas trees up, through the college football playoff season? I wonder. I would. Absolutely. Anyway, so, if we do water management, where, we drink more water as a flushing agent to clean out our bodies. And then we also, use our reverse osmosis water in cooking to making soups, chili. And what happens is that we're getting more nutrients out of the fruit and vegetables that we eat. So we really don't boil a fruit. Luke, do you know of any fruit that's boiled? No, me neither. We don't boil fruit. Maybe making homemade applesauce, but how many, makes homemade applesauce nowadays, right? So, okay, let's make homemade applesauce. Let's start doing that, because then we get all the nutrients. We use reverse osmosis water. We get all the nutrients, out of the apples for applesauce. But when you boiled, cauliflower, I love cabbage. Who out there loves boiled cabbage? Boy, that's really good. Boiled cabbage is awesome. And then, broccoli. Broccoli's good. And so if we make vegetable soup and we use reverse osmosis, so we're getting all those needed minerals in that vegetable broth. Enhancing, the pharmaceutical in waste regulation and waste management, that's a great idea. But the other part of it is, kind of defeating. It's maybe start, thinking about how much we're prescribing and what we're taking. Because over-the-counter medication is a billion-dollar business. And, especially cold season, this is where I think they make their bank. I mean, they make their money to go to Hawaii at this time of year with over-the-counter medications that are being sold. And everybody takes an over-the-counter medication because nobody wants to be sick. Here at Water Pros, we have effective removal technologies, with the point of use reverse osmosis. And then we also recommend supplementing, helping the point of use reverse osmosis with the whole house water softener. Again, reverse osmosis systems are not designed to operate in hard water. Specialists at the World Health Organization outline an advanced treatment methods such as ozone, granular activated carbon, reverse osmosis, which we just mentioned, which are, exactly what we do here at, Water Pros. Ozone, I'm not a big fan of as much because ozone, the byproduct of ozone is poison. And so you have to have a properly activated carbon system to support an ozone filter. But activated carbon is absolutely, one of the most overused water filter medias, in the market today. Activated carbon does everything. Unfortunately, I've seen activated carbon on well water where it absolutely just does the wrong thing. And before I forget, I want to say hi to some folks that I met today. So hang on one second. I want to say hi to Jim and his wife. I went out and visited them this morning. They have a little horse. They raise racing horses off of East and Quincy and Bennett. And Jim and his wife are, lovely people. And happy birthday, Jim. And wanted to say hi. They have, a city water softener that's connected on well water, and they have a carbon filter and another inline carbon filter. And they had just a really bad iron problem. And what was happening there, because of activated carbon, is why I'm bringing this up. Activated carbon is a sponge that will absorb iron, but then iron will overrun that carbon filter. And then what happens, like in Jim's case, and his wife's case, they were getting more iron coming out of their filtration system that's actually coming out of the well. Because ferrous iron is clear water iron. It oxidizes and immediately then, builds on top of layer inside that filter system. And if you have a single tank water softener, you're on well water, that is absolutely that there's just not enough soldiers in the fight, because that poor single tank, that resin's going to get overrun with the iron content, because during the backwashing process with clear water or ferrous iron, you're actually oxidizing that iron during the cleaning cycle. So a single tank water softener on well water makes no sense. And I'll give you an analogy. With a single tank water softener, it's like using the wash water to rinse your clothes. We'll be right back.
If you have hard water, smelly water, or water that just tastes bad, improve the quality of your water with the professionals at Water Pros. Water is a precious resource that's a part of everyday life. Harmful cleaners, forever chemicals, microplastics, and pharmaceuticals end up in our water supply, and they don't just magically disappear. Water treatment should not cost tens of thousands of dollars or require long-term financing. For KLZ listeners, a complete Water Pros water treatment system start at only $31.95 installed. See why people trusting the professionals with Water Pros. Water Pros is a family-owned and veteran-owned business dedicated to providing you the best in water treatment for less than the other guys. Go to waterpros.net today and request your free water test. Or call 303-862-5554. That's 303-862-5554. And ask for the KLZ Listener Special. $31.95 for a whole house water softener and point of use reverse osmosis.
What's in your water? Are you unknowingly drinking hormones, antibiotics, or dangerous chemicals? Paul the Waterman here from Water Pros. Now is the time to have our professionals help you with affordable solutions to be sure your water is free from those contaminants. Call Water Pros today and visit waterpros.net. Toxic chemicals and bacteria last forever in your water if untreated. It's a crucial time to think about the quality of your water to be sure it's safe for you and your family. Call Water Pros today or go to waterpros.net. Water Pros is proudly military owned and operated, all products made in the USA.
Colorado's residents are known for healthy lifestyles, outdoor living, and clean organic eating. 100% Colorado-owned and operated Water Pros provide affordable in-home water treatment options. Water Pros can help you with hard water, lead, and forever chemicals in your drinking water. Living organic means eating organic, and eating organic starts with clean water. Learn more about your water and schedule your free consultation today. Waterpros.net. Water Pros. Healthy water means a healthier you.
This is AM 560 KLZ, your home station.
Welcome back to Water Talk. I'm Paul the Waterman, a.k.a. Paul Dowding. Glad to have you here with me. Give me a call if you have questions, because I'd love to help you and answer any question you have regarding water treatment, or water filtration at 303-477-5600. That's 303-477-5600. Okay, look, let's go to our next clip.
A new study reveals a chemical that can be harmful to your health is found in water in 43 states. The Environmental Working Group says PFAs, which are chemicals used in consumer products like firefighting foam and non-stick cookware, can be found in 610 locations across the country, and that includes drinking water for about 19 million people. For more on this now, we're joined by David Andrews, a senior scientist for the Environmental Working Group. So I read sort of the article on this report, and it is scary because we're talking about a problem basically across the country. David, how significant are the results of this study?
Well, this should be frightening to all Americans in many ways. Because these chemicals, these are the Teflon or Scotch-guard chemicals, as you mentioned. They're common in firefighting foam. They're stain repellent, but they don't break down in the body, and they don't break down in the environment, and they actually stick to our blood. So levels tend to increase over time.
So then, are we seeing levels within our bodies? Are we finding children with this stuff in them? And how could it potentially affect our health? How is it affecting our health?
Right. These chemicals are actually found in everyone in the United States, just about everyone in the entire world. And exposure to these chemicals really can impact a lot of different health systems, cause numerous health harms, everything from testicular to kidney cancer, harm to the liver, harm to the thyroid. It actually impacts childhood development, low birth weight, and it actually can impact the immune system and reduce the effectiveness of vaccines. So it's really actually frightening how many different health systems, different organs these chemicals can cause harm to.
Is this the sort of thing that can be filtered out with a Brita filter? I know my refrigerator, sort of the water part of it, comes with a filter. Do these filters make any sort of difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, a Brita type filter will help a little bit. So there is some hope there. If there's known contamination where you are, you may want to look into a more comprehensive filter, a reverse osmosis filter. But a carbon filter, a Brita filter, that will actually help and will reduce the levels typically.
So then, according to your report, Michigan has the most locations. And you guys have this great sort of interactive map where you can check out your own state and see the locations of concern and whether we're talking about a military base or drinking water. But Michigan has 192 locations in just that one state. Is this because they have more efforts to is it that they're testing these PFAs more there and so they're identifying the problem, or is it that they really do have more of a problem than anywhere else?
So in large part, it's because they're identifying the problem. They're really getting out and ahead of other states and trying to understand the scope and the magnitude of this contamination. And what they found is that it's much bigger than they even expected. And I think that's a result we're going to see across the country as more states do additional testing. And so we're actually supporting a lot of legislation at the state and federal level to really understand the scope of this problem and set legal limits in drinking water. We think everyone has a right to safe and clean drinking water.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. I'm sure there's no minimum level of a safe number of PFAS in your drinking water. But what's the FDA doing? I mean, are they keeping track of this stuff? Do they have a level that they've said is acceptable versus unacceptable?
Right. So, and actually, it's the Environmental Protection Agency has set a health advisory value, but it's not a legally binding limit. And so, and part of the problem is they actually have not set a legal or a new legal drinking water limit for any contaminant in over 2 decades. So the whole system of regulating drink chemicals that may end up in our water and setting limits is broken. And the agency is really falling behind the science here in terms of just how different contaminants, including these PFAs or PFAS, as well as other emerging contaminants, and how they're impacting our health.
Yeah, there's some things that are sort of synonymous with purity, right? Water, like you tell your children to drink more water and put the soda down. This is a sign of being healthier. And then to hear you talk about just how dangerous our water could be is heartbreaking, and I can't believe we're not doing more about it, but you're raising the alarm, and that's really important. David, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So that, again, is scary. What 2 things did we hear that really concern me? Okay, well, I'll tell you mine. 1, in the body, PFAs don't break down. Now, this story was 5 years ago, so a lot has changed. The EPA has set recommended standards. However, I think Congress, the federal government, the Senate and the House have to pass legislation to really effectively mandate this problem. But again, let's go back. It says, in the body, PFAs don't break down. He also said everyone has them, and they accumulate. And the other thing that was really scary to me, concerning, is they stick it to our blood. Holy moly. Reverse osmosis. Point of use reverse osmosis was mentioned and absolutely is effective at removing PFAs from the water. I think the only way that we can really help ourselves is start flushing our body out with clean water. Drink as much reverse osmosis water as we can, and cook with reverse osmosis water. But PFAS are everywhere. So see, now we have to look at the grand big picture. And here's the grand big picture. Is where you go out to eat. Is that restaurant that you're going to, do they filter the water? Are they running the water through any kind of filtration system before they cook with it? Before they make your favorite pasta, the mashed potatoes, the steamed broccoli, the steamed cauliflower, your favorite bowl of soup. I love French onion soup. But if I go to a restaurant and they're not using reverse osmosis filtered water, then I'm drinking up a lot of pharmaceuticals and PFAS in my French onion soup. That's the kind of thought process we have to have. You know, the EPA went from, 17 part per trillion down to 4 part per trillion, and then recently said 0. No, nada. So what that means is that when they talk about levels of contamination, and they're talking about, in the earlier, story we played, the gentleman said, well, 1 part per billion, that's like a sugar cube in a swimming pool. That represents 1 part per billion. But at that minute level, that's still harmful. And then pharmaceuticals do add up. And if some pharmaceuticals, especially synthetic pharmaceuticals, don't break down, then they're building up an accumulation. So now what do we have? 16 years ago from the first story to where we're at today, we definitely have, a drug issue with fentanyl. So I think fentanyl can be in our water supply, which is very concerning. Cocaine can be in our water supply, which is very concerning. Then we have, heroin, and then that, and then what's that other one? Methamphetamines, that could be in our water supply. That's just one, topic. Then the second one would be over-the-counter medication, acetaminophen, can create issues. Then we have our hormones and estrogen that's in the water supply that can, affect us. And then the antibiotics that's absolutely, can be, affect us. So I encourage people to think outside the box and think about, water responsibility. So when you go to a restaurant, it may be a little, goofy, but should we ask, hey, are you using filtered water? How many times have you gone to a restaurant and you ask for a glass of water and then you go to drink it and you smell it smells like a swimming pool? How many times have that happened? Or how many times have we gone to a restaurant where we get a glass of water and our ice cubes are completely cloudy? Well, we know that's not filtered water, correct? Reverse osmosis ice cubes are nice, clean, and clear. Clean, clear water is a flushing agent that our body absolutely needs, and I think it's something that will definitely help us, with these issues. For one thing, if you stop the buildup in your body, hopefully eventually we can get to the point where, we start to dilute the current contamination that we have. All right, let's play our last clip.
Really, whether you need it or not, it's a virtual medicine cabinet in your tap water if you live in many, many areas across the country. There's a scary new report out today. The Associated Press did a big amount of research on this, and the findings show that there were traces of prescription drugs in the water supply used by 41 million Americans in some of the biggest cities in the U.S. The list includes over-the-counter pain medication, mood stabilizers, even hormones. CNN's Elizabeth Cohen joins us now from the Medical Update desk in Atlanta. First, explain where they found it and what it is that they found, Elizabeth.
Well, the Associated Press, Karen, they spent 5 months investigating this, and they looked at various municipal water supplies. Not all of them keep track of whether or not there are pharmaceuticals, but the ones that do, they all had traces of various medicines. And I'm going to give you a list. This will give you some idea of the kinds of things that they found. For example, in Atlanta, where I am right now, they found that the water contained traces of antibiotics, blood pressure drugs. In Cincinnati, cholesterol drugs. They found a trace of one of those, and estrogen that women sometimes take for medicinal reasons. And in New York City, they found a trace of a seizure drug and an anti-anxiety drug. Now, to give you sort of the big picture, how many drugs did they find in the drinking water? In Philadelphia, they found trace amounts of 56 different drugs. In New York City, they found traces of 16 drugs, and in northern New Jersey, 13 drugs. Now, the question that right now is on everyone's mind is, how in the world did drugs get into our drinking water? Well, it's not very pretty, and I'll give you the sort of sanitized version. We all take drugs, and our body does not absorb 100% of everything. Some of it passes through our body, ends up in sewage. Sewage is then treated and ends up back in the water system. Of course, the next question is, well, what about bottled water? Well, I hate to sound so pessimistic here. Bottled water often just is repackaged tap water. And that doesn't help us much at all either. Or even sometimes if it's spring water, it could still possibly contain these trace amounts. Humans basically have an impact everywhere.
So I think that's a good reinforcement of what we already heard. Look, let's go ahead. Because of time, let's play this last clip.
The No Pills project is investigating the effects of pharmaceutical waste entering rivers and surface water, and if it can be reduced by using both technical and social interventions. Funded by the EU, the study is also examining the effects of pharmaceuticals on aquatic life.
I think if you start on wastewater and the effect that wastewater has on the natural environment, then the most important thing is to get the organic load out of it. So that's what's happening in most sewage works anyway, that the crude organic waste is removed and fertilizers are removed. But then once you get to that level, you ask yourself what is still left in the water, and does that what's still left in the water have an effect on the environment? So we don't really know how big the problem is. But we think it is probably safe enough to say that there will be an effect, and we think it might be time now to start investigating the magnitude of the problem.
The No Pills project is also multidisciplinary in its nature and brings together a number of different specialisms from across the university.
We have, for example, a microbiologist. We have 3 chemical analysts. We have waste managers. We have social scientists. We have currently 6 PhDs, for example, working on the project as well, and they go across the whole bandwidth of things, so anaerobic digestion, chemical analysis, detailed investigation of microbiological effects on the wastewater, in the receiving environment.
The project is funded by the EU and involves partners from across Northwest Europe, including other universities and water boards.
The benefit we have, especially from Glasgow Caledonia, is that you have these interdisciplinary teams, that you have, for example, communication experts who do a lot of research that we as a water board, for example, cannot do, because we are very much, our core activities are water management, water services, water treatment. And having these scientific experts in exchange on our sites, for example, this is really, really helpful.
There's an awful lot of work that happens before you get out to the river. Getting out to the river is the best bit, but before you decide, where you can sample, you really need to look at where all the inputs are, what the flow of the river is, because that has an impact on the concentrations that you might find. So there's quite a lot of preliminary research. Also, how many drugs do people take? Which drugs do they take? So we need to make a selection, because there's 3,000 different substances that are licensed in the UK, so we can't look for all of them, and we've only got 13 that we are actually going to be monitoring. So just to make that selection took quite a lot of time as well. So then eventually we get down to the river, and then we come back with our data, and then you need to do all the analysis of the data that you've gathered. So really the bit at the river is only a little bit in the middle.
As well as looking at the scientific aspect of the disposal of pharmaceuticals, the No Pills project also examines consumer behaviour and how people understand medicines and their impact on the environment.
What we are looking at this stage is to find out how people understand medicines, understand the use of pharmaceuticals. So I think there's a really big issue about how people understand their own use of medicines. So we're starting to look at that. So the first stage of the work, which we're in the middle of, will be just doing interviews with people to see how they use medicines, what they think about their use, where they store them, and then more importantly, how they dispose of them.
There's no evidence whatsoever, there's no suggestion there would be any effect to human health. If you think of the volume of water flowing down a river, then even if you are in contact with the river water quite a lot, you don't ingest very much of it at all, even if you're swimming in it. And the quantities that you ingest are so much lower than anything that you might take therapeutically that it's really unlikely that there would be any effect on humans whatsoever. So there's no need to be alarmed, and the project is really focused on the effects on ecosystems rather than on human health.
So basically, I think common sense, I've said this before, is a dying commodity. I think when medications, pharmaceuticals were prescribed, I absolutely don't think they ever thought about what the concern would be, how it would pass through the body, what it would do, or how it would affect, the future regarding the quality and the safety of our drinking water. I don't think drinking water was really ever taken seriously until Congress passed the Safe Drinking Water Act. But, today, I hope, I brought in light the dangers that we have to really think regarding pharmaceuticals. These stories that we shared with you were, anywhere from 5 to 16 years old. But they relate today. And what scares me is back then, the Associated Press was the leader in breaking these stories, both with CBS News and CNN. But we don't hear any of that today. And I think the reason why we don't hear any of it today, where I think silence here speaks volume, is because of the other hormones that are in the water supply, absolutely, that can affect our health at dangerous levels. I really believe that they're doing this for a reason, because it would be alarming if we found out exactly what levels of certain hormones, certain antidepressants, puberty blockers are really big to me, because puberty blockers are scary. It's a drug it's a sterilization, and that's the last thing anybody wants their kid to be, is accidentally victimized because drinking the quality of or thinking they had quality water, drinking their water. And we need to understand antibiotics is something that people are aware of in meat, in poultry. And so let's not drink antibiotics in our water supply as well, correct? I drink a lot of reverse osmosis water. I share that with you. I have it hooked up to my ice maker. So everything we do at home, even our animals, we give reverse osmosis drinking water for. I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I think we should also have ultraviolet light in our home, UV filtration to zapping viruses and bacteria, because I think it's proven that these viruses and bacteria, in certain cases, can live, in chlorinated water supply. And the case in point I'll give you is back when COVID was active and a part of everyday life. Everybody saw the news segments where they were testing the virus at a waste treatment plant. Well, you don't test for a dead virus. So if they were testing for a live virus at the waste treatment plant, then that's because that water also has chlorination in it. So I think it's something that we really need for full protection. Ideally, water softener supports the reverse osmosis. Remember, reverse osmosis is nanofiltration, and they're not designed to deal with hard water. On a side note, remember what happened with the bottled water industry. Bottled water industry used reverse osmosis membranes as both primary and secondary filtration. So they were sending hard water through an RO membrane. An RO membrane was grabbing it. But now remember this, RO membranes, if you do a natural flow, once they get full and they can't accept anymore, they stop the flow of water. They stop producing water. But in a manufacturing setting, what are they doing? They're forcing the water through the pump. They give the membrane no choice. So then what happens? The microplastics, break down smaller, and then we had bottled water contamination, right, with microplastics and nylon RO fibers that were found in bottled water. Now, that also can mean that the secondary reverse osmosis membranes in bottled water manufacturing, the particles got so small that they passed through the membranes. So, common sense, we have to think this through. So let's do it right. Let's take the water softener and let's remove the hardness. Let's allow the reverse osmosis to focus on, the pharmaceutical and nanoparticles in the water without getting beat up by hardness. Let's also think about putting, an ultraviolet light filtration to zap any virus or bacteria. That's ideally what we need. And what are they doing that? How are they doing that right now? How do you think they're treating our water for viruses and bacteria right now? Chloramine. Here in Colorado, it's a chloramine. That's a chlorine mixed with ammonia. Now, in some parts of the United States, they still use only chlorine. And chlorine off gases out of the water. It doesn't stay. And so, Denver was the first one here in the metro area to use, chloramine. And I think since 2015, everybody else in the metro area adopted that same procedure. So it's a chloramine that they use as a sanitizer. Now, chloramine and their byproducts also can create cancer. It's harmful for us, so that's why we come out, we do the free water test. We test the water for hardness, pH, total chlorine, TDS, iron, and we do the whole gamut. Especially, let's think about this too. What did we learn? Folks that live out in the rural area, you're not immune to these problems. Especially, you're not immune to the pharmaceutical problems, and you're absolutely not immune to the forever chemicals problems. But is that not scary? I mean, the PFAS can stick in our blood. Holy moly! That's to me is just unbelievable. And no wonder the EPA went from 17 part per trillion to 4 part per trillion to now 0. And I've always said this: you don't need to have a high number to have a water contamination concern or issue. And then back to pharmaceuticals. we need to call. Everybody needs to get on the phone and call their water supplier, their water district, and ask them, are you testing for pharmaceuticals? Well, we know, unfortunately, they can't go to the state lab because the state lab lost their accreditation pulled by the EPA because they had somebody out there wanting to fudge water test numbers. Again, why would you want to do that? So, in closing, I'd like to share some good news with everybody. I think I'm going to go ahead and state from me, Paul B. Dowding of Water Pros, Paul the Waterman, I say it's okay to keep the Christmas tree up all the way through college football playoffs. Absolutely. Leave the yard ornaments up, the Christmas tree lights up until the end of that game, and then once February hits, then we could take it down. Or why don't we leave it up all the way through Easter and just take the decorations down and color, hang out mauve and purple ribbons for the Easter season? What do you think? Well, anyway, listen, I really appreciate it. Thank you for, being here. And you're always welcome to give us a call at 303-477-5600. Everybody be blessed and have a best day ever.
Remember to reach out to Paul the Waterman with your questions and water filtration needs, and be sure to tune in to Water Talk Thursdays at 2 p.m. to talk with Paul. And for more information, find him on the programming page at klzradio.com.